Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the Unsigned Manager Podcast, where I, Siji Kolawole, break down football's key topics and headlines each week. This week's episode is about the big managerial changes happening at Europe's top clubs, so let's get into the episode. So over the last few weeks, seasons have been wrapping up, but the storylines have gotten more and more ludicrous. Managers getting randomly sacked, others are leaving after success, players are frustrated, looking for time to play before the Euros, which are fast approaching, transfer rumours are bubbling, it's been a whirlwind time. And the managerial merry-go-round has started. Around this time of the year, clubs take stock of their season, analysing the growth potential of their squad, weaknesses in performance, and the general atmosphere of the club. Even though it may not always be for the right reason, owners and sporting directors would rather replace a manager and hope a new one can paper over the cracks, rather than face their own poor decisions. Just within the last few weeks, West Brom, Crystal Palace, Wolves, Tottenham, Sheffield United, Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, Borussia Mönchengladbach, Frankfurt, RB Leipzig, Wolfsburg, Inter Milan, Roma, Fiorentina, Juventus, Lazio, Napoli, Sampdoria, Lyon, Montpellier, Real Madrid, and even possibly PSG have all sacked their manager or hired a new one for next season. That's 7 of the top 8 teams in the Bundesliga, 5 Premier League teams, 6 of the top half in the Serie A, 3 of the biggest teams in French football history, and the most famous club in the world. Now, some of these changes are justified. In the case of Sheffield United, where they were en route to be a historically bad Premier League team. Some were falling outs with the board, like Zidane and Perez in Madrid, and some were just terrible ownership decisions compounding on themselves over time, like Juventus and Inter Milan. So this week I want to swing by some of the stops in the managerial merry-go-round, look through some of the reasons for the managers leaving, analyse whether I think it was a good decision, and just break everything down. Okay, so let's start with Juventus, and this is a clear case of poor upper management decision making compounding into a terrible managerial change. After the sacking of Maurizio Sarri, Juventus decided to hire Andrea Pirlo. So to make that clear, Juventus sacked a manager with a proven philosophy who was shown to be highly successful in Serie A, effective in the Premier League, who won the Serie A after one of the most tightly contested league runs in 9 years, whilst making 2 cup finals. He'd pushed Juventus hardest with his Napoli team based on possessional dominance. He just won the Europa League. They decided to swap all of that for an unproven manager who had been under 23s manager for 1 month and hadn't taken charge of a game before he got the call up to manage one of the biggest teams in football history. Now, don't get me wrong, Sarri's Juventus were far from the standards set by Conte and Allegri, and that possessionally dominant, short passing, heavy style didn't quite sink into the Juventus foundations, and they were easily shown up by Lyon in the Champions League. But the idea of hiring a completely unproven manager before he was able to get any experience with the second team and given him a jumbled mess of a squad littered with highly paid older talents that he played with, or very young prospects who need gelling and moulding, just doesn't really seem fair. If Pirlo wasn't a former star of the club, would they have given him the job? If he had handed in his CV with his name blocked out, is there any way they would have given him a call back for an interview? I mean, talk about setting up a manager to fail. 9 days before being appointed the head of the under-23s to the head of the first team. After a difficult COVID season, where it was clear that Inter Milan would be a tough team to face, with a highly experienced manager following on the back of another managerial appointment who didn't have extensive top-level experience, but Sarri had much more experience than Pirlo. Even Arteta and Solskjaer had more experience before they took their jobs than Pirlo did. And then it's a mystery why he struggled to put his best team out early in the season, why results slipped, why they went out to complete underdogs Porto, why they finished lower than ever since the 11-12 season. It's a miracle Pirlo won 2 trophies and finished in the Champions League on the final day, That's an amazing season for a rookie manager. My issue is more that the poor ownership decisions put a brand new manager in such a predicament when it's obvious he didn't have the experience for it. Anyway, a few days ago Juventus let Pirlo go, choosing to turn back to familiar face Max Allegri, one of the most competent, accomplished and successful managers of our time. Allegri was previously at Juventus for 5 seasons, winning all 5 titles, as well as 2 Champions League final appearances. He's one of the masters of tactical flexibility and adaptability, creating a system which drew the best from older legends like Bonucci, Chiellini and Pirlo, as well as younger talents like Pogba and Dybala. But after disagreements over squad building and power within the Juventus hierarchy, Allegri left Juventus in 2019 and has been out of work since, although he's been linked and interviewed for recent top jobs. However, 2 years after his departure, he was still easily the best candidate for this type of squad, which has differing talent levels, older players, young promising talent, and the need for some tactical flexibility, especially as the club has a large wage bill and isn't the healthiest financially. A smart rebuild by an experienced manager must be on the cards. This is a good decision by Juventus, I think, but it wouldn't have been needed if they had made the right choice the first 2 times. Because now when you look at the squad, I think it needs major surgery. Rumours are intensifying that Ronaldo's looking to leave. The 36-year-old has apparently told his teammates he wants to go, and Allegri was eager to get rid of him the first time he was at the club. Wojciech Szczesny might be on his way out the door to make way for Donnarumma to come from AC Milan. Gianluigi Buffon has said he's going to retire after this year. Chiellini and Bonucci are growing older, and an effective squad rebuild hasn't been done in a while, with Juventus choosing to buy multiple players for similar positions, kind of just hoping everything works itself out. But there is some good news. De Ligt has publicly announced his love for the club. Alex Sandro is excited for Allegri's return, as is Bonucci, and young talents like Kulusevski and Chiesa and De Ligt are perfect starting points for a squad rebuild to be built around. I really think Juventus owners should just give Allegri the keys. Get out of his way, stop with any power plays and just let him do what he wants to do. Let him make the signings he wants, let him decide who leaves as he wanted in the beginning, just let him build the squad. In so many cases with negative downturns at football clubs, somebody wants power that someone else is unwilling to give up. And that power play happens, someone leaves, and then later everyone realises that they were all being petty and they've all just hurt the club. Get out of Allegri's way. Let him make the decisions he wants, and I guarantee Juventus will be better than if Agnelli was still running it. And speaking of petty power plays, let's take a quick look at Tottenham. So peak Pochettino Tottenham were one of the best teams to watch in the league. Flowing attacking football coupled with a strong defensive presence, which pushed them to be a real competitor for a few years. Twice in Pochettino's tenure, Tottenham had the best defensive record in the league, and he was one of the top managers in Europe, getting a half-injured team to a Champions League final with a pairing of Moussa Sissoko and Harry Winks at the base of midfield. But then, as always, there was a power play. Pochettino was frustrated with the life cycle of players at Tottenham, not feeling that the club understood that they should be rebuilding, but instead Levy wanted to draw out the peak of their stars as long as he could have. Poch didn't want to sacrifice short-term performance for long-term health, which the Tottenham board were directly opposed to, and an argument ensued. And even though it was squashed, the damage had been done to Tottenham's season, as they'd taken just 25 points from their last 24 games and were severely hungover from the Champions League successes. And so it was done. Poch was sacked, Tottenham paid the wages they owed him, Mourinho was hired, and the rest is history. Until it wasn't. Jose's tenure was a real roller coaster. The thought of it is fun and exciting, but afterwards, clubs are just left drained. The Tottenham players ended up with a fractured relationship with him after he sidelined big names like Dele Alli and Gareth Bale, and his defensive football began to bring poor results and no enjoyment from fans or players. After a turbulent, disappointing period, Jose was sacked, although I just do not understand what kind of a club sacks a manager 6 days before a cup final. Meanwhile, Poch was at PSG in January of this year, in charge of a big European superpower, fresh off a Champions League final appearance from the previous season. But a semi-final exit to Manchester City and a shock title loss to Lille, rumours have intensified over the last few days of a return to North London for Pochettino. And for this to happen, and I stress nothing official has been said, although talks have taken place, Levy would need to give Pochettino the ability to make transfers as he wanted before. No more can Tottenham go transfer windows without spending to save for the stadium. No more can they watch Chelsea and Liverpool and Manchester City scoop up all the best talent. Poch would need guarantees of the rebuild he said was happening 2 years ago. Otherwise he may as well just stay where he is, and if he does, what is really next for Tottenham? Okay, next on the managerial merry-go-round, Antonio Conte. And this is a prime example of a club being poorly run, causing an elite manager to leave. Now picture the scene. Juventus have won the last 9 league titles, dominating Italian football. They sign their contenders' best players, have elite level managers, and are making the league uncompetitive. It's getting boring. Other teams have tried to challenge, but they just can't match Juve's spending and attraction to top level players. After poorly built squads and even poorer performances, a long-term saga between a captain who's at war with the fans, the owners and his own teammates, whilst also being the best and most valuable player. Inter Milan sign Antonio Conte, an explosive, high-tempered, highly intelligent leader who innovates and draws the best out of all the players he coaches. However, back to that power dynamic, Conte demands everything from everyone involved with the club and wants everything to happen exactly as he wants it. The owners, the directors, the players, the coaching staff, everyone needs to be giving 100% at all times, exactly the way Conte wants it. This means that signings, squad decisions, transfer budget, everything runs through Conte, and if he doesn't like it, everyone's going to know about it. That was the crux of his last 2 departures at Juventus and Chelsea. Things started happening that Conte didn't like, and he wasn't shy at letting management know. So now he's at a club whose owners, Suning Holdings, aren't excited about investing too heavily, as they lost interest in owning a football club and are actively looking to sell the team or secure investment from other firms. The squad is quite jumbled, with a polarising Mauro Icardi leading the club to 4th after a tight race with Atalanta, AC Milan and Roma. Inter hadn't won a Scudetto in over 11 years, and this squad didn't seem poised to do it. So Conte got about to changing that, spending over £170 million in his first year to revamp the squad to Serie A winning levels. In came Romelu Lukaku, Christian Eriksen, Nicolo Barella, Stefano Sensi, Diego Godin, Ashley Young, and Conte decided to put real experience alongside promising young players, which included the talented Lautaro Martinez. The reshuffling also meant big names needed to be moved on, such as Mauro Icardi, Miranda, Joao Mario, Keita Balde and Ivan Perisic. Conte had taken a team of slightly stagnant, well-known names to a fast-tempo, aggressive pressing side filled with high-level experience but players who had a hunger to prove that they were good enough to cut it at the top level, and young players who were looking to make a name in the game. This team put Juventus under pressure like Sarri's Napoli, losing out to the old lady by only 1 point in his Serie A championship. They scored more, conceded less, lost less games, but just couldn't quite get over the line. They also got to the Europa League final, losing out to Sevilla and giving Conte an unfamiliar trophyless season. But he doesn't stand for failure, and he does everything to avoid it. So Inter added more talent, bringing in Achraf Hakimi in an amazing deal from Real Madrid, making Sensi and Barella permanent and gearing up for another title push. And this year Conte did it, bringing into their first league title since 2010, outlasting challenges from Milan and Juventus. The main firepower of the team were Lautaro Martinez and Romelu Lukaku. They lit up Serie A, combining for 70 goal involvements in 96 games. Inter were clearly the best team in the league. Conte looked poised to be a thorn in the league side for many years to come. But then, another power play. Suning Holdings decided to tell Conte that after the first championship in a decade that he needs to cut the wage bill by 20% and sell £80 million worth of players, which means a few of his untouchables, Lautaro Martinez, Romelu Lukaku, Nicolo Barella, Milan Skriniar and Achraf Hakimi, they'd have to be sold. Suning have just taken out a €270 million loan to support the club and had previous failures at running a club in the Chinese Super League, which folded after a lack of resources. And I bet you can tell what happens next. Conte and the board have tension. That tension turns into anger, and just 3 weeks after winning the title, Conte is back without a job. It's a real shame because he could have built something serious at Inter, but poor financial management from ownership and caring more about money than the legacy of the club has hamstrung an elite manager to building a real project. And now he's left, the rumour mill has started over whether some of these players will join him at his new club, which could be Real Madrid. And speaking of Real Madrid, they are also taking CVs for new managers. For the second time in 3 years, Zinedine Zidane has left the club, with the key reason seemingly being the tension between him and Madrid's looming spectre Florentino Perez. So let's start with the background. Real Madrid sacked Rafa Benitez and on the same day hire former legendary player Zinedine Zidane, who's been in charge of the B team for about a year and a half. Zidane then becomes a coaching phenomenon, leading Madrid to 3 Champions Leagues in 3 seasons, which is a record, as well as winning a league and a host of other trophies. He was able to manage Cristiano Ronaldo's minutes to make him a potent Champions League threat, whilst bringing the best out of the midfield trio of Casemiro, Kroos and Modric. Young players like Isco and Asensio were bursting onto the scene and all seemed well on the outside. But Zidane was worn out. He'd lost his energy and he said that Real Madrid needed a change, another way of working, another idea if we're going to continue winning. I feel it's going to be difficult to continue winning, and because I'm a winner, I'm going. And funnily enough, that rings more true now than it did in 2018. Of the team that Zidane won his first Champions League with, 13 of the 27 are still at the club. 12 first team players are over 28 and only Eden Hazard hasn't been at the club since the first Champions League win. Zidane turned a weakness into a strength, showing that even though he struggled to move on from his established stars and form a rebuild, he made a new defensively minded system to protect his aging midfield and draw the best from the post-prime years of Benzema. But I think this is one of the things that really troubles Zidane. Madrid needed to move on from their past glories, and I don't think he was ready to be a part of that. Zidane left in 2018, not wanting to face the rebuild, and returned to mostly the same squad. The only difference being an injury-prone Eden Hazard and an older crop of players to rejuvenate. He rejoined after poor managerial performances of Santiago Solari and Julian Lopetegui, coming back to a lot of fanfare and love from the club, as the fans and players really wanted him back. In his open letter that he just posted, Zidane said, quote, "I felt the team needed a new approach to stay at the highest level." But Florentino Perez didn't help matters. It's amazing at how bad some people's timing can be. It was leaked before a massive Champions League game that Perez would put Zidane on the hot seat if Madrid didn't make it past Mönchengladbach, because he'd grown unconfident of the Frenchman's squad rotation and performances. Before a big Champions League game, it was leaked. And it seemed like Zidane never forgot this, with the lack of internal confidence in his abilities a key reason of why he chose to depart the club. From Zidane's open letter, quote, "Right now things are different. I'm leaving because I feel the club no longer has the faith in me I need, nor the support to build something in the medium or long term. I know the demands of a club like Real Madrid. I know when you don't win, you have to leave. But with this, a very important thing has been forgotten. Everything I built day to day has been forgotten. What I brought to my relationships with the players, with the 150 people who work with and around the team. I'm a natural born winner and I was here to win trophies. But even more important than this are the people, their feelings, life itself, and I have the sensation these things have not been taken into account. That there has been a failure to understand that these things also keep the dynamics of a great club going. To some extent, I have even been rebuked for it. I wanted to be respect for what we've achieved together. I would have liked my relationship with the club and the president over the last few months to have been a little bit different to that of other coaches. I wasn't asking for privileges, of course not. Just a little more recollection. And with Real Madrid's finances and the way they are now, with debts ballooning to over 900 million euros and recent transfers of Eden Hazard and Luka Jovic possibly being seen as busts, the squad age rising, a rebuild now more necessary than ever, and a president who's been publicly ousted by his former manager for his lack of compassion and understanding of people's feelings in the club, I'm not surprised that Zidane has chosen to move on. And I wouldn't be surprised if the next manager wasn't exactly jumping for joy at the possibility of taking Real Madrid on. Normally the top club in Europe, now it doesn't seem that enticing to deal with that kind of rebuild. And that brings a close to this week's episode. I'm really thankful for all the support and listens. Please keep sharing the podcast. I really appreciate it and it does help out. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you and goodbye.